Hello guys, thank you so much for joining the webinar today. Today we will be talking DID and DoD settings in our S series PBX. Because a lot of people do have doubts about those things, so we figured we'll open up a specific webinar over this topic. We talk about our DID and DoD things and things you might want to pay attention to, or some things you might some things that you might get run to make which will cause your trunk configuration fail and so this is our main topic today. Well, thank you for your participation. If you before we actually get started, I like to make sure that every one of you can hear me fine. So I like to ask you for a favor. So if you do hear me, please give me a reply through the chatting panel to let me know. Okay, thank you so much for your help. If you do hear me, please give me a reply. Okay, thank you. Okay. Well, it seems like everything works fine. So let's get started. So DID settings. So firstly, I like to take just a few minutes to talk about what is in fact DID settings. So DID settings usually this is basically a service for multiple telephone numbers over one or sometimes more analog or digital physical circuits to the PBXs. And it's also for signals that dial telephone number to the PBX for internal routing to a specific PBX extension. But with this, for this, we will be talking about in our future webinar. It is mainly used in PRI or E1 lines, in BRI lines, and in SIP trunks. Those trunks are physically possible to manage multiple calls at the same time. So DID numbers will make sense. So DID services is mainly acquired from service provider. So aside from the main number that comes with the trunks you acquire, probably a E1 or a SIP trunk, they will give you multiple what they call a DID numbers. So with those DID numbers, you can actually assign those DID numbers to specific destinations. So outside callers can call directly by those DID numbers and reach to the destinations you have assigned these DID numbers to. So the first thing you probably already know is that a DID number is actually purchased from the service provider. It's not something that you can decide by yourself. So once you have created your trunk to tell PBX series that the incoming call is allowed, you need to create an inbound call route to tell your PBX also what to do with the incoming calls. So DID number will work right there. And here we have an example, because you can have multiple DID numbers with one trunk. So let's take E1 lines as an example. You can actually assign DID number to specific channel in this trunk, because an E1 trunk, as you already know, can go over 30 calls, and if you're using a SIP trunks, it totally depends on the business package you purchase from the service provider. With this in this example, our company have two numbers. The first one is 5503301. The other one is 5503302. Those are the DID numbers. Now we have to assign those two numbers for two services. We have assigned, as you can see, the 3301 to the international service, and we assign the 3302 for domestic service. So we will publish those numbers, perhaps the 3301 in our English version or international version web page, in our in the credit card, in the business card printed for our international sales, and of course 3302 will only be for domestic service. And so this way, people who call 3301 will directly reach to the international service team, and the 3302 to the domestic service team. So this way we divide those two. We use the two DID numbers for well, according to our departmental function. So this way, our telephone system can be function more efficiently with the right purpose, directly serve for the purpose. So this is basically what DID is. So, and of course, as we have said, we are going to talk about DoD, but we will leave it for later. So now let's get into the sorry. Now let's get into the our web GUI to see what can we do for the DID. What can we do to set up our DID settings? Okay, so now we are in our web GUI. To set up DID settings, you should have your trunks configured correctly, as we have mentioned. You can mostly it is used in E1 trunks, in SIP trunks, and sometimes in BRI trunks. Those that can physically manage multiple calls at the same time. So, to set up DID settings, you will need to go to incoming calls, because well, that's DID. So let's go into the call control and inbound calls. So DID numbers can be used in several scenarios. So now let's go through those things. So you can, and the most basic way to use DID number is to assign one DID number to one specific extension. So for any reason you want direct access to those extensions, to those personnels for some specific outside callers. So this is what you want to do here. And here, by this way, you will know how DID is configured. Okay. So in inbound route, you will see a DID pattern. So here you can actually put in your DID number. So in our case, it's 550-3301. Okay, so we can assign this DID number to a specific destination. So here in the destination, we find the extension that we want it to be assigned to and choose it. Okay. So now, as you can see, this DID number has already been assigned to the extension number, but we need to we need to decide which trunk should we use. We should use the trunks that that provides the DID number. So in our case, the E1 line. Okay. So this is how basically DID number works in our system. It doesn't matter what kind of trunk it is, as long as it supports with DID function, and you have actually purchased the DID number from the service provider. You can set it simply this way, and you have assigned a DID number directly to this to the specific extension. Okay. Sometimes you have a bunch of DID numbers, and in our case we have two DID numbers, but well, let's say now we have three DID numbers, 550-3301 to 550-3303. So now we have three DID numbers. We want to assign it to three extension numbers, right? So this way the distribution will be a little bit more efficient. So we can actually assign 3 DID numbers at the same time. So here in extension, we want to set extension range. So all we have to do is to put 3 extension right here. So we can put in 1001 to 1003. Okay, so now we have 3 extension numbers assigned with those 3 DID numbers. And well, if someone call 5503301, this call will be sent to the extension 1001. And well, this is how it works. So if someone call through 5503303, then the call will go directly to 1003. So this is how it works, and it also works for 02. But as you have seen here, if we want to set it this way, that means the DID number has to be continuous, and the extension that you want to assign to has also be continuous. If, well, let's say let's say we have bunch of DID numbers, but they are not continuous. Then in this case, we will have to set one specific inbound route for this DID number. Then we have to create a new inbound route, because they are not continuous. Then the system cannot, make up the mess and do it by itself. So you will have to do it one by one by yourself. But in most cases, you wouldn't assign DID number directly to specific extensions. In most cases, as you see in our example, we use the one DID number for a specific service that is probably operated by a special group in our system. So we would want to assign a DID number to a group of extensions who is managing this service. So when this call come in, all those extensions can get access to this calls. They can ring at the same time, probably, or well, at least they can. They have all of those extensions. Everybody in that team can answer the phone and answer the call. So this is what we mainly want to do here. We can actually do this by assigning DID number patterns. We'll leave the trunk selection because this is where the DID number comes from. And in destination, we can totally choose a ring group. So as you can see here, we have created a link between this DID number and this ring group. So if someone call through this DID number, the call will go right to this ring group. So every member in this ring group can answer the phone, can answer the call. And well, if you are not clear with the concept of ring group, this is basically a group of extensions who you have put in together manually, and well, they will have equal access to certain calls made to this ring group as destination. So well, let's say if someone call this ring group, then all of those extensions in this group will ring at the same time, or ring sequentially one by one according to the configuration. But as I have said, they will have all equal access to the ring group. So in this case, we can assign the sales team that is in charge with the international service to this DID number, and it will work just fine. However, in many cases, people do not, even though we have assigned this specific team to for international service, but we don't want your system to go that plain, or that is to say, I want this. I hope whenever people, even though people call through this DID number, they can still hear the IVR. They can still hear the IVR, but the IVR in our example can be specially made for international services. It will probably in English, and we'll talk about the company, and give welcomes to people who ever call into the system. So here we can actually assign IVR as a destination, right? So we can actually assign whichever IVR there is for this service. So in this case, we can make an IVR as a international service. Okay. Oh, sorry, no space. Okay. So now we can assign the key we want them to to dial, but this is actually the IVR settings, and we're not going to talk about IVR settings. But if you're interested to know, you can absolutely check our YouTube page. You will find videos specifically on IVR. Okay, so this is our international service. So this way, when people call into the DID number, they will go directly to the IVR. They will hear whatever you made. They will hear the prompt that you specially made for the international service, and they will dial the key according to your indication and reach to the international service team. And this way, your telephone system, you will certainly appear very performance with your telephone system, or and a lot of people would want that. And here we want to show you some other options you might want to you might be interested in. So we have Q actually. So well, if we can set Q as a destination. So you can directly dial the DID number to the queue, to reach to the queue. So, but as you have seen, we can actually assign IVR to this DID number. So you can mainly divide. We consider it the most ideal and might be the most popular way, because people would want IVR in many cases, and we can assign IVR and use IVR to guide people to the service that they want. But through this DID number, we can actually divide the service more into more details. So this is how we want to use DID settings. The thing is, with DID settings, you need to be really careful that if when you are signing with specific extensions or extension range, you have to make sure that the DID numbers and the extension that you are assigning with those DID numbers have to be continuous if you want to set them all in one inbound routes. Okay. This is, but once again, I want to repeat, we really recommend that you use IVR, because your telephone system will sound way better. It will leave a great impression for those who call into their system, and more importantly, you can actually guide through the calls through IVR. That is way more flexible than directly set it in DID in inbound routes. So DID numbers to IVR for us is the right way to go. But of course, this is good thing about our PBX is that you can be totally creative with your system that you are having. Okay, this is inbound. This is DID numbers, and then we have DOD numbers. So DID numbers are direct inward dial, and DOD numbers are direct outward dial. So one is for DID is for call in, and DOD is for call out. Okay, so if you want to set DOD settings, you would want to go to trunks. So now let's go to our E1 trunk to do the DOD settings. So here you will see actually DOD. Okay, so we can actually assign extensions or extension group to one DoD numbers. In our case, 5503301. We want to assign it to the sales ring group. Sorry, not ring group. This is very important here. The ring group, this concept is, as you can consider, you can understand it through its name. It's ring group, so it's mainly for incoming calls to ring. And if we want to make a group to make outbound calls, we need to go to extension settings, and here we have extension group. So you can actually put in a group of extensions as one extension groups. So they will appear as a group in our as well in making outbound calls. So here in this case, we continue with the DoD settings. Now we put in 5503301. Okay, 5503301. Of course, we can assign specific extension number to this DoD number. We can also assign the international service extension group here, in which we have included everybody who is in charge of international sales. So here we assign this group to this DoD number, and we confirm. Okay, so this means that anybody who made call, anybody from this DoD number, from this team, if they make outbound calls through this E1 trunks, and through this E1 trunk, and with the caller ID that they have, that shown on the other side, on the callee side, will be 5503301, the specific number we use for international service. But there is one thing that, and actually this is quite important, is that you need to make sure that this DoD number is also acquired from the service provider. It cannot be just any number you want to put in. It won't work. It has to be confirmed, and it has to be confirmed, and actually as you can see here, the configuration in the DoD numbers for SIP trunks is a little bit different, but you need to know that this number has to also comes from your DoD, from the service provider as well. And so here we have DoD number. We put in the DoD number, and we have a configuration of DoD name. This is mainly for you to identify the DoD rules that you have set right here. So here we have international service, and then we assign the group. So here we also assign international service group. So that means all extensions in this group made the phone calls through the SIP trunks, and will the caller ID shown on the callee side will be 5503301. Okay, so this is DoD settings. The thing with DoD is sometimes you might probably find, if you are using a E1 trunk or a SIP trunk especially, you might find out that you have no problem making receiving phone calls, but you cannot make outbound calls. This is probably because of the fact that you have DoD settings, but the identification is not correct. So here, let's go back to the E1 trunk, and let's check out. Here in this E1 trunk, well, I'm not saying it's a global thing, but sometimes if your service provider is really strict about this, you have to set your global DoD as the main number of your E1 line. Otherwise, when you make outbound calls, your identification will be incorrect, and the outbound call will be failed. And this is the same case over the SIP trunks.
Well, the thing is, sometimes when you are setting up your SIP trunks, you have same problem. You can make inbound calls, but you cannot make outbound calls. If you have this problem, you should firstly check in the SIP trunk here. We have from user. So you need to put in your main number here because well, with this settings, the main number here this is where you show your identification with the data package you sent out. If you forget to set this, then you surely won't have your outbound calls because you have no identification along with the data packages, and your service provider will reject your outbound calls. But if you have forgot about this, you can also set the OD numbers. As I have said, if you have set your DoD numbers, you set all of those, you choose all of those extensions. Then, along with those DoD, you get the identification of the DoD number. It will work just as the same as from user. Well, but we do suggest that you set from user here correctly, of course. I guess what I'm trying to say here is DoD is actually the number that's authorized by the service provider, and that will be your identification when you make outbound calls instead of the main number sometimes. Of course, it has to be I cannot emphasize this enough, approved by the service provider. So this is what DoD is. And if you have problem making outbound calls, but you can receive inbound calls with SIP trunks, with E1 lines, with BRI trunks, that's probably because of your identification, and you need to check your DoD settings and the from user settings with the SIP trunks, because that's your identification. Okay, I guess that's everything that I have to talk about today. Thank you so much for your participation. And if you have questions, if you have a doubt, please talk to me through the chatting panel. Well, I have muted all of you guys throughout this meeting because I have to guarantee the audio connection, the audio quality of this webinar, so everybody can hear me fine. But so you cannot actually talk to me during the webinar. But if you have questions, you have doubts, you can absolutely talk to me through the chatting panel, and I will give you an answer right away. Okay, so this is our Q&A time. If you do have questions, please don't hesitate to tell me. Okay, thank you.